Welcome to Pro Players Elite Network podcast. Today's guest, man, I'm excited to talk about a legend of the game, Hall of Fame running back, Paul Hornung. Mr. Hornung, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh, I'm glad to be with you.
As painful as it is for a former Trojan to bring up Notre Dame, how did you end up at Notre Dame?
Well, it was something I've always looked back on with great pride, you know. I loved being at Notre Dame when I was there and had the opportunity to. I think each and every one of us who've had the opportunity to go to Notre Dame and graduate feel proud of that accomplishment. And I was no different. You know, I was from a small school here in Louisville, Kentucky, and when I first heard from Coach Leahy, I was thrilled to no end because I was invited up to make a visit, and I did. And my goodness, I had the opportunity to meet John Lujack and all the other, you know, kids who were there at Notre Dame early on. And my 4 years at Notre Dame were some of the 4 best times of my life. So I enjoyed going to school there, and I was very proud of it.
Did you play for Coach Leahy?
No, I didn't. Got there, he retired. I got there in 1952. Graduated in 56. And but when I got there, he was in his last year.
What a legend he was.
He was something.
So did you know the history of Notre Dame before you went there?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I did some homework, you know, when they were recruiting me. You know, recruitment, of course, even in those days was 3 or 4 months, you know. We never made a decision. The players usually in high school never made a decision till after about 2 or 3 months of being recruited. And I was no different. I did the same thing because I wanted to go to Purdue and I wanted to go to Indiana and Kentucky. Bear Bryant was almost living at my house here in the West End of Louisville. If I was there and my mom was there, he was there having coffee almost every night. So I really wanted to go to Kentucky. And I asked him one thing. I said, would you ask Coach Rupp, Adolph Rupp, if I can come out and try out for the basketball team? So he got that done for me. So I was on my way. You know, I really thought I was going to the University of Kentucky. Coach Bryant had me a job lined up, you know, with the car company up in Lexington. So I would have, you know, had a job while I was starting off there, and I would have a little money to put in my pocket.
What made you go to Notre Dame as opposed to playing for Bear Bryant?
Well, I guess just Notre Dame in itself. I never knew anybody there except Ralph Guglielmi. Ralph Guglielmi was the quarterback before me, and we became instant friends, especially when I started school there. And but I had a friend of mine from high school, Cheryl Sipes, who also got a scholarship, you know, to Notre Dame at the time. So we went together. So it was kind of, you know, an affair that fit right down my alley because Cheryl and I were such good friends. And he was a halfback, but he never made it. He got hurt when he was a sophomore. He got hurt when he was a junior. So he didn't really get to play much when he was a senior. But I always felt that he would have been a great football player at Notre Dame, and because he had great speed. He won the Kentucky 100 in the 220 his last 2 years in high school. So he was running like 9.98, which was unheard of at that. So he was very quick and very talented. He was a great basketball player too, and that's one of the things that it was important to me to be able to go out for basketball. And frankly, he said, you know, we'll arrange that. Johnny Jordan was the coach there at Notre Dame, and when I got to be a junior, he let me come out for basketball. So I played basketball at Notre Dame my last 2 years. And in fact, I was very proud of the fact that Abe Saperstein called me from the Globetrotters. He was a senior, and he said, "Paul, would you like to play against the Globetrotters?" I said, "Sure. Are you kidding? I love to play against them. I've been watching you guys down in Louisville all my life, even when I was younger, before I was college age. So, I mean, here I was a senior in high school making about $2,500 a game with the Globetrotters. I was the richest kid on the campus. It really it helped my family out to have that extra money. And but I mean, you can imagine. You think back today, $2,500. Goodness, that's huge. but the Globetrotters drew full houses wherever they were, even in those days.
Back to your time at Notre Dame, the one thing that is so special about college football is the pageantry, the traditions. How special is that environment in South Bend?
Well, it was unbelievable. I mean, here Johnny Lujack, for heaven's sakes, was on the coaching staff there at the time. And, I got to meet Johnny Lujack. I mean, that was a great thrill for me. I got pictures to this day hanging up right here in the office, of some of my affiliations with the university. But I really had 4 beautiful years there. We weren't too good. By the time I was a senior, we didn't have too many kids playing who had any experience. And we suffered through a 2-8 season, my senior year at Notre Dame. And, of course, that's not too happy a year up there for those guys when you're 2-8.
Do you go back for games at Notre Dame now?
Yes. I'm going back next month. I'm going back up for a signing at a golf tournament. So I'll go back and sign autographs for the afternoon and hang around South Bend. I've already arranged where I used to have dinner at a great restaurant downtown South Bend. Arrange a few good things like that.
Do you want to mention the name of the restaurant and give them a shout out?
No, I don't remember it. But I got a friend of mine working on it.
That's what's so great about Notre Dame is that alumni base. And here you are so many years removed from being an icon there that you still are involved in Notre Dame and these golf tournaments.
Right. Well, it seems as if every 2 or 3 years they call me and want me to come back up at the sports shop up there on campus. Under Armour does a lot of business up there, and I work a little bit with Under Armour all over the country, so it works out pretty well for me.
The other thing that's so special about Notre Dame and USC is that rivalry.
It really is.
Did you already know about that rivalry before you went to Notre Dame?
Oh, yes, yeah. John Arnett and I were great friends. Graduated the same year. We played in the All-Star game in Chicago together. And John Brody was a senior. Of course, he was from Stanford. And Arnett was, of course, from Southern Cal. And but we were on the All-Star team together, and I became good friends with John.
Look, I got to interject on that All-Star game, and I have the picture at home, and my mom's kept it all these years. Holy mackerel, what a team. My father was on that team, but also Parker, who played for the Colts, Jim Brown, Jerry Tubbs, Tommy McDonald. It's a who's who of NFL legends. Unbelievable talent on that All-Star team. So the rivalry against USC, walking down that Coliseum tunnel, can you describe the feeling?
No, because they kicked our ass. So I wasn't too happy, when I was walking out of that stadium in my senior year. But anyway, Arnett has never let me forget that. He brings it up all the time when we're in the same spot. But I mean, I loved Los Angeles. It was a great thing for me when I was a senior. Seemed like I spent a lot of time out there my first couple of years in pro football. I did a lot of entertaining out there, and I did a lot of appearances. So I really enjoyed L.A., and I was, offered a couple movie contracts. So I was in touch with Hollywood, and I thought I was going to make a move there, but it never materialized.
How close did it get?
It got real close. You know, I was asked to do a couple of movies, but I couldn't get away from school to do it. You know, at the time I was a senior, and I couldn't get that free time to spend, you know, like 10 days on somewhere doing a movie. I was invited to do one or two out there. But you know, John Wayne was so big in those days, and I got the opportunity to meet him at a rehearsal or some kind of thing with the movie company, and he said, you come to LA and Hollywood here, I'll take care of you. You just make sure you call me. Well, that was pretty strong coming from a guy that big, you know. Have John Wayne going to really try to help you out a little bit. I was looking forward to that. But nothing ever really materialized after the 6 months period was over and I had graduated. And I went on to figure out I was going to, you know, be a professional football player.
I got to tease you a little bit. You're hanging out with all these Trojans. Why didn't you go to SC?
No, I never had a scholarship to SC. Nobody knew about me out there when I was a senior in high school. Although I was I had a lot of publicity around the state of Kentucky, you know, because I was all-state in football and basketball. And so there weren't too many kids in those days that made all-state, you know, and I wanted to go to Kentucky. And because Bear Bryant was the coach there, and he was in my house about every weekend having coffee, trying to get me to go to Kentucky, and he had lined up a job for me, and he had lined up he just lined up everything, and he went to Coach Rupp and said, "Can we let Hornung come out for basketball?" He said, "Absolutely right. He's a good basketball player." So here I was going to have the opportunity to try out for the basketball team also. That's why I wanted to go to Kentucky.
It's hard to think that Bear Bryant wasn't able to get you. You were one that got him.
It really was. Yeah. He always said that was unbelievable. When he'd come back, he'd call me every year when the Derby was on. He always brought some people back, and I gave him a few winners that first year. So he never forgot that. He'd always call for tips, you know. He'd say, "Got anything?" But he was a beauty. I mean, he was, you know, and I became a very good friend of his, and I was very honored to be in that position. I've always felt he was one of the greats of all time, and what a great coach he was.
The other thing I just wanted to go back on that you mentioned was John Arnett. USC fans know that the Jaguar was unbelievable and had a heck of an NFL career. So I just wanted to reference that. So let's talk about your senior year at Notre Dame. And for the fans out there, Mr. Hornung, you're part of a trivia question, being the only Heisman Trophy winner to play for a losing team.
2-8.
Yeah,
it really was.
Yeah.
That's why it was unbelievable. When I found out I won the Heisman Trophy, I didn't think I was going to win the thing, you know, because, you know, figuring coming off a 2-8 football team. But I was high in the voting my junior year, too, so I think that's what really helped, you know. And I had great competition in those days. We had Arnett and then John Brody from Stanford. You know, I think those were the two West Coasters that were high in the voting in the Heisman. So it was a special thing. I had those good friends out on the West Coast, and whenever I had the opportunity to go out there, I'd look them up, and we'd get together and have a few laughs.
So your time at Notre Dame comes to an end. Did you know that the NFL was a possibility? Oh,
yes, absolutely. Yeah, they had contacted me. Green Bay had called and said, "We got the first pick." And he said, we think we're going to take you. So they kind of alerted me to you know, that I didn't really believe that was going to happen, but it did. So when here comes the draft, I was the first pick of the draft, 1956, from the 56 group. So the only thing I had before that was the All-Star game in Chicago, which John Arnett was there and Brody was there. And so we all played in the All-Star game together. And I had Ron Kramer who was an All-American in basketball and football at Michigan. He was on the football squad there at the All-Star, and we drove to Green Bay together. I was the bonus pick in the draft that year, and he was the first pick for the Packers. So we went from the All-Star game in Chicago and drove up to Green Bay together to go to training camp, and became the best of friends, of course, and he was my best friend with the Packers.
When you got to the Packers, Coach Lombardi was not the head coach at that time.
No, that's right. Yeah, I can't even tell you right now. I'm trying to think who the hell it was.
Blackburn?
No, he was right after my coach got fired. My second year, and then Lombardi came in, and but anyway, the coaching thing is such menagerie. And everything happens there. For heaven's sakes, I don't remember half the stuff.
When Vince Lombardi came in, there was a culture change.
Oh, it was a tremendous culture change. He changed the whole scenario, for heaven's sake. You did it his way. He was a strong. He was like, I had known Bear Bryant, and I had watched him and studied him, and he was a lot in that vein. He was the boss, period. And Lombardi was the same way. Nobody had a voice in that organization that was higher than Vince Lombardi as far as the Packers were concerned. And we found out right away what that meant, as players. He established his authority immediately. And we had to understand that, we were going to do it his way, as simple as that. And I think, really, when you think of great coaches in college and in the pros, if they're very successful, that's the way they think. They're tremendously high people. You have to understand that.
With Coach Lombardi coming in, the Packers had struggled a few years before that, and culture change needed to happen, and that's what he was all about. And the interesting thing to me is a lot of those pieces were already in place and already on the roster. Bart Starr was already there. You were there. Jim Taylor was there. Ron Kramer was there.
Yeah, we were all drafted before he came. Yeah, I don't think he had too much to say on draft choices as far as we were concerned. Naturally, he had a lot to say about the Packer choices after he got there, but just the names that you mentioned, we were already there, and playing on a losing football team, He straightened all that out. He saw what I think he came in. He told me a few times. I could see we had some talented football players, but all they needed to do would be instructed to do the right thing at the right time.
That's exactly what he brought was a system. Right. I'm going to ask you about some personnel, some of your teammates, and if you could share some memories. Let's start with Bart Starr.
Well, what can I say? He's one of the greatest people I've ever had the opportunity to meet. He was a great leader and a great player, and he's just a joy to be with. Bart was a complete team player, and he got the good push down in Alabama, of course. And I don't know if Bear Bryant was there or around in those years with Bart, but anyway, he was our guy. And when Vince came in, I think that's one of the reasons he came to Green Bay, because he saw the talent that we had. And in his mind, he thought he saw some pretty good talent. But one of the guys that he really, had to zero in on was Bart. Because, you had to have a quarterback, especially in those days, to lead your team. And if you weren't winning, you didn't have too good a successful quarterback. Usually, if you looked around in the 50s and 60s, if you won, you had a good quarterback. We had one of the best of all time.
I mentioned to you before we started the podcast that I had an interview with Jim Taylor a few days ago. Memories of playing with Jim Taylor?
Well, Jim Taylor was one of the great running backs of all time. He was tougher than hell. and he was he was a strong running back. Jimmy was came out of LSU and was a runner in the SEC. And they played tough football back in those days. And Taylor was he was rough. He liked to play rough, and he played well rough. It was tough. He was a tough son of a bitch to tackle, boy. Jimmy was one of the best from a position to the line of scrimmage. There wasn't anybody better because you couldn't tackle him. You never tackled him behind the line of scrimmage. Taylor would break at least one tackle almost every time he ran the football. But he was one of the best of all time. There's no question, and he enjoyed it. And he loved playing the game. And it was a joy to play. We played well together, Jimmy and I. And I told him, I said, look, I'm going to block for you, and I think you're going to enjoy that. But I'll tell you one thing. When you had a block for me, you do the same damn thing. And he did.
Former offensive lineman, it all starts up front. And, man, did you have some incredible talent up front.
Well, we sure did. And I'm very, very happy to be able to tell you that this is a very special year. I'm going back. I go back to the Hall of Fame every year, Canton, Ohio. And I'm going back this year because Jerry Kramer, our great, right guard, playing alongside of Forrest Gregg, who's also a Hall of Famer. And Jerry's going in the Hall of Fame this year. And, we've been pushing and shoving and talking about getting Jerry in for many years. And all those years that he never got in, we all knew he deserved it. Well, the NFL did the right thing in bringing him in, and he's going to be one of the inductees this year, and I wouldn't miss it for this will be one year I really look forward to going back.
Long overdue. That's one of my pet peeves is the guys that built the game, that played in your era. Guys nowadays don't know about the guys that built the game.
That's true.
And then when you look at the NFL Hall of Fame and how the senior committee gets one guy a year, it's a joke. It should be skewed where you only get one guy for the modern day game, and you get to put more guys that built the game in the Hall of Fame.
That would be good. That would be a good idea.
It's such a travesty, and it's so long overdue. A couple of things I asked Mr. Taylor when I did an interview with him was being in that huddle with all the guys that are out on the field, and Hall of Famer here, Hall of Famer here. What an incredible huddle that was.
It really was.
With the talent.
When you look back on it that way, it's just, it's amazing because we got, Forrest Gregg, and we got now Jerry Kramer. And Skoronsky, everybody's always pushed him. Bob played at Purdue and was an All-American there, and he was a great lineman. He's on the left side, and we had a tight end that really should be in the Hall of Fame, Ron Kramer. Kramer was All-American in basketball and football at the University of Michigan, probably one of the great athletes of all time at that university, and I think if he were around, there'd be people talking about him getting in the Hall of Fame because he was that good. He was the best tight end in pro football for 8 or 9 years, for heaven's sakes.
During your career, in my opinion, the greatest time of the NFL with all the teams and the defenses and how the game played. And playing against, I'm going to throw some teams at you, defenses, and the longest NFL rivalry is with the Bears and the Packers.
Absolutely. Well, the Bears and Packers were always special, and they're special to this day. I'm looking forward. I go back up to Green Bay almost every week they play. And I'm going back up, of course, for the early Bear game. It's the first or second week of the season, so I always go back for that. And I like to see, I try to get Butkus to come back, because he's such a huge, player as far as Chicago is concerned. He's probably one of the greatest linebackers of all time, and nobody's even ruled the roost over him. I think if you really had to take a vote on the number one middle linebacker of all one that wasn't too far behind him was Nitschke. And Nitschke was a bitch, and but Butkus was in a class by himself, I felt.
Memories of playing with Ray Nitschke.
Well, what can I say? He was the leader of the defense, and he never missed a play. Raymond was always there, and I think that's what Lombardi liked. He never got hurt, and that was very important for Coach. He liked to know that he had a player that wouldn't go out with injury. See, a lot of the guys, when they get to professional football, they still take that college feeling with them. That if they get hit a certain way, they might have to come out for 3 or 4 plays. Well, you never wanted to do that with Lombardi. Hell, you're liable to never get back in there. If you have a little half injury, you better play with it. You better gut it up and hang in there and play and show the coaches you could play with a little injury. Play with a little setback here or two. So that's how we grew up with the Lombardi era. And Jimmy understood. It was tough for him to get hurt anyway. He was so strong. He was a strong, muscle-bound running back, from LSU, and he was, pretty good guy to play with as far as I was concerned. I think we formed a pretty good backfield, Bart, Jimmy, and I. So we had a great time together.
What made that Packers sweep so hard to stop?
Well, you got so many guys who could do the right thing up front. We had a good center, Jim Ringo, of course. He's a Hall of Famer. And we got Jerry Kramer, who's going in the Hall of Fame this year, which is just sensational. This will be one of my greatest trips back to Green Bay, knowing Jerry Kramer. They finally let Jerry in. He should have been in there a long time ago. And Forrest Gregg, of course, will be there. And but we had so many guys who did the right thing the right way, and that's the way Lombardi coached. I always said his players did the right thing the right way, and that was his. That was one of the things that he gave to the lead. He gave the players that opportunity to really hang in there and do the right thing the right way, and he coached that way.
All the fans that are listening, they've seen NFL films, they've seen Coach Lombardi on that chalkboard, drawn the lane with the sweep. How often did you guys run that Packer sweep to get it, to master it?
Oh, well, humongous amount of times. And during the practice week, I'd probably say we would run it 100 times, 100, 200 times. And if it didn't work during the game that week, you could be sure that you was going to get straightened out the next Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Your ass was going to be out there practicing that same play over and over and over. Because that was his play. That was Lombardi's play, the sweep.
How special are those Packer fans?
Well, they are, what can I say? I couldn't say enough good things about them. They really supported us. And win, lose, or draw, or we had a tough game, they were behind you. And wherever you went, all over the state of Wisconsin. And you know what? It's amazing. It's that way today. When I go back to Green, I'm going back up to Milwaukee, for instance, in about 2 weeks. I got 4 or 5 appearances lined up. I'll be in Milwaukee for about 3 days, and then I have something to do in Appleton, Wisconsin. I got to go up there, and then 2 in Green Bay, and then I'll come home. Then I'll go back up to Wisconsin, maybe 5 more days after that, and do the same thing, and then we go back for almost every home game.
From the fan base and the alumni at Notre Dame and the fan base with the Packers, man, you couldn't have picked 2, college or pro.
That's true. You're absolutely right. And I've thought of that many times, how lucky I've been to have gone, to made the choice to go to Notre Dame and then have the NFL have the Green Bay Packers the choice to pick me, even though it was even number 1. I didn't care if it was number 10. Looking back on it, I would have loved being the 10th round draft choice if it lasted that long. But being the number one pick of the draft, going to Green Bay was a great honor, and I enjoyed it up there every year that I was there. I really did.
Finished your career as a New Orleans Saint, even though an injury ended your career. Was it hard for you to leave the Packers?
Oh, absolutely it was. But I knew I had to do something, And so when I went down to New Orleans, I loved New Orleans anyway. I had spent a couple trips down there, and when I knew the New Orleans Saints, Tom Fears called me and said, "I'm going to take you. What would you think about that?" I said, "That's fine, Tom. I'll do my best. I'm not in 100% shape right now. I was hurt, and then of course my injury lasted, and I couldn't play down there." When I got down there and I saw some of the blocking, I told Taylor, "It's going to be a long year for you, buddy. You thought you were a good runner. You better be a lot better runner when you're running behind some of the offensive linemen that I saw in New Orleans."
Your nickname was the Golden Boy. Did you like that nickname?
Oh, sure, I really did. I enjoyed it, and Notre Dame is special. I've always felt that you learn that up there. And my 4 years up there were years that I really enjoyed. My senior year, I worked my butt off and went around. I must have had 100 speeches and amongst 100 appearances. By the time I got to professional football, I had some cash in my pockets.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care too much about my salary because I had enough money, doing all those appearances. And in fact, I'm going up to South Bend 3 weeks. I'm doing a golf tournament, signing autographs at a golf tournament, and I'm going to be up there and speak at their dinner. So it's, it's still around, Pro football and college football is pretty big in South Bend and Chicago and Milwaukee and Green.
It's been an honor to talk to you and walk you through your...
Where are you located?
Out in California.
Okay, all right, good.
Just listening to you, you can hear how special Notre Dame was and is to you to this day, and that's awesome. Thank you for sharing your journey with the fans today. Other than your public appearances, are you doing anything else nowadays?
Nope, that's it.
That keeps you busy enough.
It sure does.
Well, thank you for sharing your journey with the fans today.
Okay, thank you.